Lesson 2.4 is on solving equations with the variable on each side. And for the last two lessons, we've been learning how to solve equations. And this lesson right here is going to actually be kind of the end of just solving regular linear equations. So after 2.4, I should be able to give you any type of linear equation, and you should be able to solve it. What we're going to do starting in 2.5 and for the rest of the chapter, we're going to use those equations and learn how to solve those. They're going to be more application type lessons. Like, for example, we're going to learn how to solve proportions using equations. The next lesson is on absolute value. So this is kind of the end of just solving regular linear equations. So our goal today, we want to solve equations with variables on each side, and we want to also be able to solve equations that have grouping symbols, which would be your parentheses and your brackets. Okay, here are two Common Core content standards. They're the same ones that we've been using for the past couple lessons. Our new vocabulary word, it's not actually new, okay, it's identity. We've talked about identity properties before, but you'll see what that means when we come to it in the lesson. Okay, here are our steps for solving equations. We want to make sure that we simplify both sides of the equation first, and if there's the distributive property, we want to do that first. Then we can go ahead and do addition and subtraction to get the variables on the same side and the constants on the other side. And then we can go ahead and do our multiplication and division. So let's look at an example here. Here's our equation. 8 plus 5c equals 7c minus 2. And you can see now that we have variables on both sides of the equal sign here. Okay? So our first step, we want to get the variables on the same side. So what we're going to do, we're going to subtract 7c from both sides. And we get 8 minus 2c. Now it's a minus because that's a negative 2. And then over here we have a negative 2 left. Okay. Then we're going to, since this is a positive 8, we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. Okay, so negative 2 minus 8 is a negative 10. And we have a negative 2c left. So our last step then is to go ahead and divide both sides by negative 2. And our answer is c equals 5. Now you might question, do we have to take minus 7c? No. You can move this 5c over here and you can subtract 5c. And then bring your constant, then you could add 2 to both sides. Either way will work, so whatever way you feel more comfortable with. Actually, in this example, if you did it the opposite way, you would avoid these negative signs. Okay. Alright, let's look at another example. Now here's one with grouping symbols, with our parentheses. Anytime that you have grouping symbols where you can do distributive property, you want to do that first. Okay? So we're going to distribute this 1/3. So we have 1/3 times 18 and 1/3 times 12. And that gives us 6 plus 4q over here. Then we have to do the same over on this side. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 7 is 42. Now we're kind of back to where we were in example 1. We want to get the q's together, and we want to get the constants together. So what they decided to do was subtract 12q from both sides, so that the variable will be over here on the left. If you would like to do it the other way and subtract 4q, you can do that. Okay. So 4q minus 12q is a negative 8q. Alright, now let's get rid of this 6. So it's a positive 6, so what we want to do is subtract 6 from both sides. And negative 42 minus 6 is a negative 48. And again, that minus acts as a negative and it stays. So then our last step then is to divide both sides by negative 8, which our final answer then would be a positive 6. Again, starting right here, you don't have to subtract 12q, you can subtract 4q to this side, and you would still end up at the same result down here. So there's a couple different ways you can do it, but still end up with the same result. Alright, so now you've got a practice problem here. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and try this problem. Okay, let's take a look and see what you did here. The first thing you should have done is the distributive property. Okay? 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 4 is 24. Then do the same thing on the right side. 3/8 times 46 is 17 1/4. 3/8 times 8 is 3. Then let's go ahead and concentrate on our variables here. I'm going to subtract, since this is a positive 17 1/4, I'm going to subtract 17 1/4 r. So 18 minus 17 1/4 is a 3/4 r. Minus 24, and then over here you have left is we have a 3 left. Okay. So now let's get rid of our minus 24. The inverse of subtracting 24 is adding 24. Okay. 3 plus 24 is 27. So now we have this 3/4 r. And remember, when we have a rational number, a fraction here, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So what happens here is these cancel out, leaving you 1. Okay. And then 27 times 4/3 gives you 36. Okay. And to check your answer, you can always go back through and check and plug in 36 into your original equation. Okay. And don't be afraid that because you have a ugly looking fraction here. Okay. All right. The last type of problem we're going to look at is if we have kind of like a special situation. If we look at this problem right here, okay, the first thing we want to do is we want to do the distributive property. So 8 times 5 is 40, 8 times 2 is 16, and then we do the distributive property over here. Well, you can see that we have 40c over here and 40c over here. So if we subtract 40c from both sides, our variables cancel out. And we don't have any variables left. So now we have this statement right here, negative 16 equals 320. Well, negative 16 does not equal 320. So when this happens, when your variables cancel out, okay, we say that it has no solution. Okay, and if you don't even write no solution, remember we talked about the empty set. You can write the empty set. Our variables cancel out on both sides, leaving us with no variables left. And this is not a true statement. So what we're saying is there is no c that you can find that will make this equation true. Okay, there's no solution. There's no answer for c. Likewise, just the opposite. Okay, if we start to solve this equation and we do the distributive, we distribute the 4 and we distribute the 1/5, we get 4t plus 80 equals 4t plus 80. And we can go ahead, we can subtract 4t from both sides if you wanted. But what we'd end up with, 80 equals 80. And that is a true statement. Okay, 80 does equal 80. If you end up with a situation where the statement is true, where you get the same values on both sides, we call that the identity. And your answer here would be all real numbers, meaning you can substitute any number you want in for t, and it would work in this equation. Okay, because both sides equal each other. This is the identity. So you could write for your answer, right here it says this equation is identity. So you could write that. You could also write all real numbers, because any number you plug in will work. So you do have those two special type of equations where you either do not have a solution, or you have an infinite number of solutions, or just a regular equation where you just have one simple solution. Okay, so go ahead. I want you to pause the video. Pause the video and go ahead and try to check your progress problems. Okay, so again, the first thing you should have done was start with the distributive. Distribute the 2 and then distribute the 3. And you get 8a plus 16 equals 8a minus 10. Well, right there you can see that when you subtract your variables, that you're going to end up with this statement right here. Okay, 16 equals negative 10. Well, we know that's not true. 16 does not equal negative 10. So your answer then for this equation would be no solution. Okay? When you get rid of your variables, when you subtract your variables out, you get 16 equals a negative 10, and that's not true. There's no solution. Let's look at B. Again, go ahead, do the distributive. Distribute the 1/7, and then distribute the 3. And you can see right away that 3c minus 8 equals 3c minus 8. That's a true statement. If you wanted to subtract 3c from both sides, you could do that, and you could end up with negative 8 equals negative 8, which is a true statement. Okay? So because this is an identity, our answer is going to be all real numbers. Okay? All right, so tomorrow bring any questions that you have, and we'll start right away working on some skills practice. Okay, see you tomorrow.